Gleesy and I recently did a marriage night, and it was such a blessed night.
It really, really was.
Yes, and just through it all, we know everybody couldn't be in the building, but guess what? We have a special treat. Part 2 of our Picture Perfect Marriage Night, where couples got to get together, connect with each other, and reframe their marriages.
Yeah.
Now we want you to feel a part of that connection, because connection is such a valuable part of building that marriage community.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoy.
Now we gotta talk.
Okay, this next question I think is really important because it's an area that is always evolving, even for us. So what is one piece of advice you can give a couple who struggles with communication?
So couples are different, right? God puts us together so we complement each other. You got those that go in the shell when there's I call them healthy communication. And then you got the folks that are very vocal and they just want to talk. Why don't you want to talk? I mean, what do you mean? We need to talk. And no, some people need to be in the shell. So how do you work on that? I'm a talker. She used to go into a shell, but we found out that you need space. Otherwise you end up saying the wrong thing. You know, that scripture, Ephesians 4:32, talks about, be ye kind, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, have forgiven you. Sometimes that forgiveness starts by being home and away from each other, stepping into the other room when the communication gets a little bit rough. And it's okay. Now, 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, that's stretching it. Now you keeping speech, as the little kids used to say, I'm going to keep speech from you. And that thing boils on the inside, and the anger builds up. So try to open up in some way, shape, or form, but try not to go, I always say, don't go more than 24 hours.
Yeah, and that's something that we do with our couples, or we talk to our couples about when they're having a problem, especially since you always have, it never seems like you have a talker or two talkers. It's always the opposite. So one thing that we do with our couples is the person that's not ready to have the conversation, you can say, I don't have the capacity to talk about this right now, but can we come back at X amount of time? And you set that expectation so that the person that wants to talk won't keep coming back and saying, when we gonna talk, when we gonna talk. It gives you the opportunity to reflect, get your thoughts together, and know that you're coming back together at 8 o'clock, and we can have this conversation when both of us feel a little bit better.
And just to add to that piece real quick, like, your time apart is not to build your case. Exactly. So you're not separating and saying, I need some time to get myself together, so you can go into your space and like, oh yeah, I remember when they did this and to come back to try to win the argument. That's not the purpose of that. I think Ms. Ursula mentioned it, like, go and worship. Go and get into your word. Go and get into a space so that when you do come back, again, like, you can speak to your spouse as the spouse that God gave you. And sometimes when you go into that separate space and you actually get into worship and you get into the word, the argument that you thought you were going to have, God takes it right away from you. And you come back now, and you come back to apologize, and you come back to reconcile, and you come back to how can we move forward together. And some practical things that we had to, like, we've gone through probably 3 or 4 communication tools because we were struggling, because I'm one that I want to get it resolved right away. Lacey wants some time to kind of gather her thoughts, and when I was trying to push it, now she feels like, again, she's being pushed. And when she wanted to wait, I felt like I was being left alone. And we once heard an analogy that whenever you're having, so we have a name for it too, Lacey calls it intense fellowship. It's like you're going up it's like you're going up a mountain together. And the goal is, as you're having this intense fellowship, it's not just go up the mountain together, but to come down together. And if one person decides that I'm done with this, I'm not talking to you anymore, and they walk away, They just came down the mountain, they left you up to the top by yourself. And the goal again is to always come down together. Now, that does not mean that you resolve the issue, you resolve the conflict. It just means that you came into agreement. Agreement could be, we're not going to resolve this right now. Can we kind of take some time to regroup, get ourselves together? Maybe we need to come back to this tomorrow. Again, that is your agreement at that time. That is your resolving the conflict in that moment, is agreeing on what we're going to do next. And some other practical things we had to implement. We once started passing the remote. The remote represented who gets to talk at that moment, because we were over talking each other. So it was, if you did not have, and it could be any object, if you didn't have the object, it wasn't your time. But if you didn't have the object, it wasn't your turn to speak. So that you are actually taking that time to listen and hear what your spouse is saying. And when they're done, then they pass the object.
That's another one, Christ the chair.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. One that a couple passed on to us was that they said whenever they would get into intense fellowship again was, they would take a chair, they would sit it in between them, and they would imagine that Christ was right there. Ooh. And they said it was a game changer for them, because now, what would you say to your spouse if Christ was sitting in between the two of you when you were having that intense fellowship? And that shifted the room for them, that shifted the atmosphere for them. Because now, you're going to talk about Christ's daughter or Christ's daughter in front of him, in front of her father? Are you going to talk about Christ's son in front of him? Again, that changed the atmosphere. And another practical one that we share with couples is STOP, another acronym. And the reason we chose STOP is because you can be in the middle of that conversation and just say stop, and you both know what that means. So the acronym is sit still. Often we find when we're in conflict, we're up and we're moving, and one person in the kitchen doing something, and another person, you're yelling at you, fluffing the pillows extra hard and all this other stuff, but you're both moving around and you're not looking at each other. And you're not remembering who your spouse is and that they were a gift from God. So we say sit still so that you can de-escalate the conversation both physically and mentally. And the challenge is to sit still next to each other, looking at each other. It's kind of hard to call your spouse whatever you had under your breath when you're looking right at them face to face. We even say add some physical touch in there. Grab their hand. Again, sit still. The T is talk it out. Talk it out means that you don't point the finger. You don't say when you did that or you did this. You talk about what actually happened and how the event made you feel. So you don't point the finger. If you point the finger, you point it at the event. When this happened, it made me feel like X, Y, and Z. Or if you're not a feeling person, when this happened, it made me think X, Y, and Z. And then you invite your spouse in. And their job is to open their heart and to hear what it is you're saying. And you invite them in by now, they need to provide clarity to what you just said. And they will do that by using a statement. So what I hear you saying is X, Y, and Z. So it's not their turn to rebut whatever it is you said. It's their job to clarify what it is you said so that you know that they heard you and that they know that they heard you. And then the roles flip. And now they talk it out. They share how the event made them feel or what it made them think. And you clarify. And guess what? If you don't clarify correctly, you need to try again. Because you didn't hear them in the first place. And you're never going to move forward until you actually hear your spouse out and understand their perspective and where they're coming from and have some empathy. And then the P is, and if you didn't catch the O is open your heart. Again, open your ears to hear what they're trying to say. And the P is pursue reconciliation. Again, that's all about walking in agreement. And the reconciliation may be, maybe you actually come to resolve whatever the conflict is in that moment, or maybe you're just not hearing each other at that time. And again, the reconciliation is, we need to come back to this at another time. We need to go in our worship closet. We need to go hear from God. We need to go read some word. We need to go decompress. Maybe workout, whatever it is that you need to do to decompress. I wouldn't suggest like walking out the house and just, oh, I'm going to the bar or something crazy like that. But something that's healthy that helps you decompress so that when you come back together, you can regroup and you can actually reconcile and resolve the conflict, because winning is not one person quitting or one person trumping the other. Winning is you walk in agreement no matter what.
Now, just a quick comment. When you mentioned you like acronyms. There's something came to mind, DTR. I think the way he said not to point the fingers, but to use the third person. We had DTR, the daily temperature reading, where did I understand you to say, or it just came across my mind that I think I said this, is that what you understood? The other thing Ursula taught me was, it's okay to write notes when you're having the healthy communication. Just write a note.
Intense fellowship.
Yeah, the intense fellowship with healthy communication. Rather than audibly say it, write a note, because the time you take to get it from your brain to pen on paper, it changes the way you're gonna say it. The other thing is, this mouth can really be loud and audacious at the wrong time. So put it on paper and read it before you submit it. It'll change your mind.
That's good. That's good. And don't have conversations when you're hungry or you're tired. That's another thing. That's a big one for me. If I'm hungry or if I'm tired, you're not getting the best version of me.
Oh my goodness, babe, that was so good.
It really was. Again, that night was such a blessed night.
Yes. We're so grateful for the opportunity to just help couples make that connection as they try to build firm foundations for their marriages.
Yes, and we were so glad also that we were able to share it with you. Through this video, you were now in the building.
That's right. Make sure that you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on anything. Follow us over on Instagram where we post marriage tips every single day.
Yes.
We'll see you guys in our next video.
Brag on it.